On today's show, we're going to talk about mindset for HVAC contractors, part 2. Last week, we talked about some basic concepts around the mindset. Today, we're going to go into a little deeper dive and talk about how important the mindset is to your success in the residential HVAC industry. The focus part is really important too, right? You got to get focused on the right decisions, the right things. And what I want to do is I want to actually share a little video with you that talks about this issue of focus, right? This is a very famous quote. I'll talk about it in this video, that dispersion is weakness, concentration is power. So take a quick look at this video. We'll come back and continue our conversation. Hey everybody, Weldon Long here. Here's something to think about. In 1909, James Allen once said, "Dispersion is weakness and concentration is power." And I love that saying because when you think about dispersion is weakness, to me, dispersion is kind of scatterbrained thinking. We're thinking about this, we're thinking about that. And yet concentration is where the power is. And we all understand the power of concentration, right? You take the sun's energy, for example. It's very, very powerful. But if you think back to when you were a kid and you had a magnifying glass and you kind of concentrated the sun's energy, like you could carve your name out on a piece of wood. That's how powerful it was. Concentration is power. This is really, really important when we go to work every single day, because the reality is whether you're a CSR, comfort advisor, service technician, whatever you do in your job, you're probably really good at it. And you could probably pretty much do it in your sleep, but that can be a problem. Because when you're so good at something, you don't have to concentrate to do it. You can kind of fall into a groove and just kind of go through the motions, right? We have to make sure that we're focusing and concentrating on every call, every customer. Let me give an example. There's an old saying that says, where your focus goes, your energy flows. So suppose you're a service advisor, you're a comfort advisor, you're a service technician, whatever, and you knock on that door and you're thinking about that bill that you didn't pay. You're thinking about that argument that you had the night before, maybe the party you went to the night before. But you're not focused on that homeowner. Concentration is power. Dispersion is weakness. You are in a dispersed way of thinking because your thinking is going different directions. You need to be right there focused on that homeowner. Now, the reality is you could probably go through the entire call because you've done it a million times. Like I said, you could do it in your sleep, but you're not going to get the full benefit of the connection with the homeowner if they feel like you are distracted. So you've got to make sure on every phone call, every service call, every sales call that you are focusing on the task at hand, especially if you're out riding around the city as a service technician or a comfort advisor. Maybe you're thinking about music or thinking about what you're listening to on the radio. Man, when you get near that house, you need to stop and pull over and you need to think about where your focus and concentration is. Because if it's somewhere else, you need to get refocused on that homeowner, right? Where your focus goes, your energy flows. And if you're talking to your homeowner and you're distracted by some of the thought, they're going to feel it. They're going to feel the disconnection from you. They're not going to feel that connection, right? We've all had the experience where maybe you meet somebody and right away you don't even like them, right? Why is that? It's because human beings, the subconscious mind is very good at sizing up people and if they're interested and connected to them or not. If your homeowner feels disconnected from you, they're not going to do as you want them to do. And of course, at the end, we want the homeowner to take our advice, whatever that is, to buy a new system, do a repair, whatever it is. So dispersion is weakness. Concentration is power. Concentrate on every phone call. Concentrate on what that homeowner is saying. When you go on that sales call, that service call, concentrate and focus and connect with your homeowner because concentration is power. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. Get out there and take some names, folks, and kick. So I just think it's really important to understand that you got to stay focused on the little things. When you think about dispersion, dispersed thinking, to me, that's kind of scatterbrained thinking, right? Working on this, thinking about that, doing this. And one of the things I learned is that you have to not just be concerned about the seemingly inconsequential decisions. You've got to stay focused on those. You have to examine the little things that make up the big results in your life. That's really, really important. So that's a very, very important lesson. And as we work into this conversation about the prosperity mindset, really important that we think about that. Now, the next conversation I want to talk about is something I call the box. So here's the deal. Imagine right here, I had a box in front of me. And in that box is everything I need to build a beautiful motorcycle, the engine, the frame, the parts, every component. And piece by piece, component by component, I start to remove, the parts of the motorcycle. And as I remove them, I begin to assemble the motorcycle, and I do it correctly. Like I put everything where it's supposed to go, right? I put the engine where it's supposed to go, handlebars, I build it correctly. At some point, I look in the box, and the box is empty, right? I have successfully removed all the components of the motorcycle and put it together. So when I step back to admire this beautiful mechanical creation that I've built, what are the odds that I realize that instead of building a motorcycle out of the motorcycle parts, I accidentally baked a cake? Well, you can't bake a cake out of motorcycle parts, right? If it's a motorcycle in the box, it's a motorcycle outside the box, right? Very simple concept. Well, guess what? That box is a metaphor for your mind. And the components of your life, just like the components of that motorcycle, the components of your life, your relationships, your health, your income, your financial security, your profession, the components of your life are already in your box. And what happens is that we go through life every day making seemingly inconsequential decisions, according to neuroscientists, 30,000 times a day. And every time you make one of those 30,000 decisions, you are reaching in that box and you are pulling out a little piece of your life, right? Your choices, your decisions, your beliefs that are in your box, little by little by little, they come out of that box. And you go through the years, you go through the decades. At some point, guess what? Your box is going to be empty. You will have made every decision and choice you're going to make. At the end of your life, you will reach some point where you're not making any more decisions and choices. It's over. What I can promise you is this: when you look back on your life, you will find that your life is a perfect reflection of whatever was in your box. If it's a motorcycle in the box, it's a motorcycle outside the box. If it's a life of wealth and success and prosperity and love and generosity in the box, guess what? You're going to build a life of love and success and generosity outside the box. On the other hand, if your box is full of greed, if your box is full of fear and anger and jealousy and resentment, guess what you're going to pull out? You're going to pull out fear and greed and jealousy and resentment. You have to understand you can only pull out whatever is in your box. Whatever is in there is coming out to create your life, for better or for worse. Now, you got to realize that your box gets filled up with information, ideas, and beliefs very early on in your life, right? The people around you are throwing things in your box, throwing ideas. You come into this world, you don't have any ideas about anything. You're just a kid, right? But little by little by little, people start throwing things in your box. So the question becomes, what's in your box? What's in your box? What are your core beliefs about sales? What are your core beliefs about wealth? What are your core beliefs about service and value? Because whatever is in your box will eventually come out in the course of those 30,000 choices every single day, because your decisions will conform with your core beliefs. I'll give you a perfect example. We get a lot of bad ideas. Again, when you're little, people come by and just throw stuff in your box. They don't even think about it. You learn through things that people say. You watch behaviors, right? You get your ideas about relationships by how your mom and dad interacted. You get your ideas about money and wealth by how your parents reacted around money. You learn all this stuff. And I'll tell you something, when you're a kid and your dad says something to you, or your grandfather or grandmother, when you're 8 years old, it's gospel. You don't even challenge it, right? If your dad tells you you're good for nothing, if your dad tells you, why can't you be more like your brother? If your dad tells you you're not going to amount to nothing, right? You believe that when you're little, because you don't have the wherewithal to change that information. So our box gets full up with all these ideas. And guess what? Not all of it's good. There's some good stuff in there, but there's a lot of bad stuff. You go to school and you're in first grade and somebody tells you you're fat. That goes in that box and stays in there. People tell you you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too black, you're too white, you're too tall, you're too short. Why can't you be like your brother? All this stuff goes in the box. And then next thing you know, you're 18 to 20 years old, you start making your own decisions. And guess what you do? You start reaching in the box 30,000 times a day and pulling out what other people put in there. And so you've got to make sure that you know what's in your box, because eventually whatever is in there is going to come out. And unfortunately, not everything in there is good. I'll give you a couple of examples. My dad, I love my father. I still miss him to this day. He's been gone 27, 28 years. But my dad put a lot of bad stuff in my box, what I call junk in the trunk. My dad put a lot of bad ideas in my head about money and about women, about all kinds of things, because he didn't know squat about either one, to be honest with you, and I believed a lot of those things. One of the things he used to tell me is, say, son, rich people are crooks. And I believed it. I'm like, okay, rich people are crooks. I got it, Dad, right? That goes in my box. So anytime I saw somebody with a nice car, a nice house, my first question was, wonder who they screwed, wonder who they ripped off, right? Well, it doesn't seem very harmful at that point, but guess what? When I grew up and I got in my 20s and I wanted to have money, I did not see the problem with stealing money to get money because, hey, rich people are crooks, right, Dad? It became a self-fulfilling prophecy, like it does for all of us. Something goes in your box, you believe it, and as you're going to find in this course, that starts driving certain emotions and certain behaviors to make it true. So you got to know what's in your box. The purpose of this program is going to allow us to examine what's in the box, and then how do we change it if we need to.
I think we all need a coach. I mean, I guess I look at Tiger Woods needs a coach for golf, and we surely need a coach for us run our business, help us run our business. When I talk to my coach, Bob, about different things, he's constantly giving me directions on where I need to go, do some studying, and it's nice that it has all that stuff in the EGIA, Contractor University stuff.
We've gotten a lot of really good advice. We're starting to implement some things that we weren't doing. We're unique because we only do ductless, so we have to kind of tweak the HVAC industry into our world, but we've been doing that, and with both Daryl's help and Bob's, we've been able to really rethink a few things, and we're starting to make some big progress.
The experience with Next Level Coaching so far has been really good. It's been really great to be able to talk about all things business, and even the social or the difficulties that we're enduring. It's not just KPIs. It's actually, it feels like it's human coaching more than business coaching sometimes.
I would say the biggest thing that I learned is about pricing, when I realized that I don't sell anything but labor. I control all my pricing through my kits, and that's where my labor is built in. And so it's made me more competitive because I'm not marking up big expensive items as much as I was, and yet I'm getting it all back from my labor. So it works really well. I'm getting paid for what we install and getting paid for what we service.
The biggest thing that we've learned from the Next Level Coaching would be the implementation process. So being encouraged on a regular basis to implement the things that we talk about, and to be able to go back and either look at the numbers or to talk to you where you remind us of where we left off, and to make sure that we're actually doing the things we said we were going to do.
Somebody else has already done this, and there are people who know how to do it. So go ask them and get the answers, because it's already been invented. You're not going to reinvent the wheel. You just have to tweak it to your company, and these guys have broad knowledge, and it just they bring it in and they can make it work for you.
Do it. I mean, Next Level Coaching, if I could convince everyone to be a part of it, I think that's a big thing for us to all participate. We need to participate in every avenue that's available to us through the EGIA.
But again, if I want to have a better life, I got to start thinking different things. Albert Einstein once said, you cannot solve a problem at the same level of thinking that created the problem. That seems to make sense. You cannot solve a problem at the same level of thinking that created the problem. So let's say I'm making 75 grand a year and I want to make 200 grand a year. I cannot solve that problem at the same level of thinking that's making me 75,000 bucks a year. I got to have a different way of thinking like somebody making 200 grand a year. And this is very, very prevalent in our industry. The reality is, do yourself a favor. Next time you got your service technicians, your salespeople together, if you're a technician or salesperson, right, we're going to do a little game of word association. I'm going to give you a word, and I want you to stop to yourself and think about the first one or two words that come to your mind. Okay? Ready? The word is salesman. Salesman. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been in rooms teaching this with 5 people, and I've been in this room teaching this with 5,000 people. And I can tell you about 2/3 of every group I've ever been in have a negative word come to mind about salespeople. Pushy, high pressure, sleazy, snake oil, whatever. Now, ask yourself this question. If you had a negative word come to mind, and you got to be good at sales to make a living, that's a clue. That's a problem. I mean, how are you going to get good at sales if fundamentally your core belief about sales is that it's negative? You see, this is why we have to examine what's in the box, because whatever is in there is eventually coming out. If my core belief is that sales is pushy and snake oil and dishonest, how the heck am I going to get good at it? Why would I get good at something that I think so poorly of. So you got to examine what's in your box. And that's what this program, what we're going to do in the next couple of hours together, is we're going to do some inventory, right? And we know how we all love inventory, right? Look at your shop. We all love inventory. But we got to take some inventory of what's in our head. And we got to go in there and we got to change it if it's not helping us. Because remember, you're going to reach in there 30,000 times a day. You better know what you're pulling out. You better know what's in your box, because you're going to pull out 30,000 decisions a day at a time. And most people don't ever really think about what's in their box. It requires we do something I call, you got to learn to think about what you think about before you think about it. Because as you're going to see, there's a very powerful connection between what you're thinking and what's happening in your life around you. Everything in your life, everything in your box will eventually come out. And I'm going to show you exactly why right here. So this is a little circle of life, a little neurological circle of life. At the top right there, you have your thoughts. Your thoughts are the contents of your box. Your box, your brain has your thoughts, your expectations, your beliefs, your choices in it. And every single day, you're going to make 30,000 decisions, 30,000 individual thoughts. Now, when you make a decision, any decision about anything, about your spouse, about food, about money, doesn't matter what it is, any thoughts you have, it sends an impulse across your brain to a part of your brain called the hypothalamus. When the hypothalamus receives the impulse of that thought, it begins to secrete chemicals that trigger the corresponding emotion. It's really important to understand this. Your emotions are not some random set of feelings you're having. They are a chemical reaction in the hypothalamus based on the thought that you're having. So as an example, if I get really angry, I get really frightened, I get really, scared, my brain will start producing epinephrine and adrenaline, and I will feel frightened. I will feel scared, right? Your thought turns into feelings chemically in your brain. If I have a very happy, warm, and loving thought, my brain will start producing endorphins, right? And I'll start feeling, if I'm thinking happy and my brain starts producing dopamine and endorphins, now I feel happy. Your thoughts drive your emotions. This is not something I'm just saying. This is just a neurological reality. Scientists know this. It's basic stuff, and you can read it. I learned it, and I got a 9th grade education, So you have a thought. It sends an impulse across your brain to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus starts secreting chemicals that triggers the corresponding emotion. Well, what do emotions do? They drive our actions. Our emotions drive our behaviors. We take certain actions based on how we feel about a particular situation. And of course, we all know our actions produce our results, ultimately. And then those results drive a different series of thoughts, right? It's just a big circle of life. And it happens 30,000 times a day. So it's a very simple concept, but it's real neuroscience, right? I've talked to neuroscientists about this. I had a guy call me one time who was a neuroscientist and said, this is the simplest explanation of the neuroscience behind decision-making I've ever read in my life. And the underpinnings of rationally motive behavior therapy. I'm like, there's a name for this stuff? I mean, it was common sense to me. You just started reading the books and figuring it out. And I realized a lot of my life, I had negative thoughts. I'm a loser. I'm a convict. I'm a punk. Well, what do you think emotions came from that? Very negative, disempowering emotions. What behaviors came from that? More destructive behavior. What results came from that? More trips back to the penitentiary, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's why your mother always said, be careful what you wish for. Like, people have known this forever. So here's the crazy thing, though. So the first thing to really take note of here is that your emotions are a chemical reaction to your thoughts. Your emotions do not happen in a vacuum. They don't just happen randomly. They are a chemical reaction to the thought. But here's the really scary part. Your behaviors, your actions are based on your emotions. So your actions and your emotions are based on your thoughts. But here's the scary part. Your actions and your emotions are a reflection of your thoughts, even if your thought is wrong or inaccurate. In other words, you can believe something that's false. You can believe something that's not true. And guess what? You'll feel like it's true and behave like it's true, right? This is a crazy, crazy phenomenon. Let me give an example. So you go to the theater one night, you're walking out of the theater with your spouse and a couple of kids, maybe your kids or, nieces and nephews, whatever. And you're walking across the parking lot to your car. It's late at night. And some guy comes running towards you and he's screaming. He's covered in blood. He's got a knife in his hand and he's running towards you and your family. obviously intent on doing you some harm, hurting somebody, killing somebody, scarring somebody, whatever, damaging somebody. And so as this guy starts running towards you, immediately your brain starts saying, danger, danger, danger. Within a nanosecond, your brain is producing epinephrine and adrenaline, right? So now what's your action going to be? Well, fight or flight. You got to decide what to do. Well, you decide very quickly that you can't outrun this guy because you got little kids with you. So right away, you decide, I got to fight. So what do? You step in towards the guy away from your family. He swings at you. He misses. You catch him in the jaw. You drop him like a sack of potatoes, right? What's the result? You protected your family. Congratulations. Just the way it's supposed to happen. The thought triggered a chemical reaction, emotion, actions, and results. You protected your family. So far, so good. Until the police get there. And when the police arrive and the guy regains consciousness because you let him have it pretty good, you realize that your thought was wrong. You misinterpreted the situation. He was no threat to you whatsoever. It turns out that he was a teenage kid running across the parking lot to meet some friends for a Halloween party. The blood was fake. The knife was fake. It was all fake. You thought something wrong. You thought something inaccurate. But even though your thought turned out to be wrong, how real were the emotions that you felt? How real were the actions that you took? How real is the result of his broken jaw? You see, this happens a lot in life. We think things that are wrong because they're limiting beliefs in our brain. But even though they're wrong, even though they're inaccurate, even though they're false, even though they're bullshit, they drive how we feel. And how we feel drives what we do. And what we do drives what we get. So you've got to make sure that your thoughts are accurate. You have to subject them to examination because we all get these thoughts early on in life that other people give us, other people's beliefs, and it can destroy us, right? Another perfect example. Let's say that your core thought as a service technician, a comfort advisor, whatever role in your company, your core thought is people just want a cheap price. That's my core belief. Salespeople are crooks. People just want a cheap price. They don't want to hear my spiel about value. They just want a cheap price. If that's my core belief, if that's my core thought, what emotions are going to come from that thought as I knock on the door? Very disempowering, negative emotions, right? Because I'm thinking, these guys just want a cheap price. And my boss is telling me we got to charge more. We got to maintain gross profit dollars per day. So tired of hearing about that crap. People just want a cheap price. That's my thought. That's going to impact my emotions when I walk in the house. And then I walk in the house in this very disempowered state. And what behaviors, what actions do I take? Do I engage in a very value-based dynamic sales presentation to show my homeowner why my company's worth more? Of course not. Your behaviors will be a reflection of your emotions, which will be to get the price as cheap as you can, as fast as you can. What's the result? You sell shitty low margin deals. You make almost no commissions. You're an unpaid consultant, a brilliant conversationalist, and the boss is mad, right? So here's the reality. Suppose you had another person like me, and my thought goes like this. You know what? People want quality and service. They want quality and service. And it's my job to teach them why my company's worth a couple of $1,000 more. What emotion comes from that thought? I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof, man. It's showtime, baby. Let's go, right? What emotions, what behaviors does that drive? I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I'm walking to the house. I engage in a dynamic value-based presentation. I show them why I'm better. And guess the result? What's the result? I sell lots of high margin stuff. You have to understand your results are simply a reflection of your actions, and your actions are simply a reflection of your emotions, and your emotions are simply a reflection of your thoughts, even if what you're thinking is wrong. This is what happens in life. We think something very limiting, we think something wrong, and we make it come true. The reality is we're all right. We're all right 100% of the time because you make yourself right. You make yourself right on a consistent basis. Your thoughts and your expectations. I was talking to a young man many years ago. He's about 25 years old, owned a plumbing company. And we were talking at an event where I was speaking. He's like, yeah, man, everything sucks. People don't want to spend any money. Customers suck. I can't make any money in this business. And then he tells me his dad was in the business for 20 years before him. He goes, my dad never made any money. He goes, in fact, my dad used to always say, plumbers don't drive Cadillacs. I thought, there's your sign, right? Because that was his core belief. His core expectation is that he's going to suffer financially as a plumber. Well, as it turned out, about 2 weeks later, I happened to be down in Florida with one of the most successful plumbing contractors in the country. And down there doing a 2-day training. At the end of day one, he invites me out to his house to have dinner, and he wants to show me his new boat. So we wrap up the training for the day. I drive out to his house. As I'm pulling in the driveway, his wife is backing out of the garage. What do you think she's driving? Exactly. She was driving a Cadillac Escalade, right? And I had to chuckle to myself. I'm like, dang, I guess some plumbers do drive Cadillacs, don't they? And so we get in their Cadillac and we go around this marina a couple of miles away to show me his boat. And his boat turned out to be a $3.5 million, 65-foot yacht. And I'm like, dang, some plumbers drive Cadillacs and yachts, right? But here's the thing. Over here, I got plumbers don't drive Cadillacs. Over here, I got plumbers drive Cadillacs and yachts and anything else they want to. Which man is right? Obviously, they're both right because they are both products of their thoughts and expectations. So you got to decide what results you want, and then you got to figure out what behaviors will drive those results, what emotions will drive those behaviors, and what do you got to think? You got to change your thinking, right? Again, Einstein, you cannot fix a result at the same level of thinking that created that result. So if you're not making the money you want to make, you don't like your financial result, right? That result is a reflection of what you're doing and what you're thinking was a reflection of what you're thinking, even if it's wrong. You cannot change your income at the same thinking that created your income. Doesn't it make sense? I can't fix any problem at the same level of thinking that created the problem, which means what? It means I got to change my thinking. I got to rewire the whole situation. And how do we do that? Well, that's the process that we're going to engage in after this next break. We are going to take some inventory. We're going to look in the box and we're going to find out, is there any bad stuff in there? And then what stuff do I want in there? What's the good stuff I really want in there? And I'm going to show you how to change the contents of the box. That's going to start driving new emotions, new behaviors, and better results, right? You got to change your thinking. As I often tell people, if you want a temporary change, you want temporary better results in your life, focus on your actions, focus on what you're doing. If you want permanent change, you got to focus on what you're thinking because your thinking is the core of all of it. Awesome content right there, as always. Now, if you like this content, please share it with your friends on Facebook. And if you're not a member, go ahead and click the button below to get a free 30-day trial of our entire Contractor University platform. We'll see you next week. Until then, my friends, bye-bye for now.